Rio awakens surrounded by clouds, standing before an angel. The angel begins by informing him that he has recently perished, yet he won't be heading to the afterlife just yet. In short, Rio has become the latest casualty of the infamous truck. Now it's up to Michael, the angel, to dispatch him to a new world to commence a fresh life. According to Michael, Rio won't be given any special quest or grand purpose in this new world. He's free to live as he wishes. When Rio voices his desire for a serene and laid-back life, Michael has no objections. But before sending him off, Michael needs to provide Rio a quick briefing of the world he'll be reincarnated into. The world is called Fee, a mystical land where about 20% of the population can wield spells tied to their natural elemental affinity. In Rio's case, his strongest connection is with the water element. Since Rio asked for a tranquil and relaxed life, Michael went ahead and arranged a cozy little house for him. As a starter kit, he included 2 tutorial books, a knife, and even placed a protective barrier around the house to keep beasts at bay. As part of his beginner's kit, Michael has stocked Rio with an ice house filled with enough provisions to last 2 months, ensuring he won't face starvation anytime soon. Additionally, Michael included a guidebook containing detailed data on every monster Rio might encounter in the region. While this will be useful for handling the forest's creatures later, Rio's current focus is on testing out his newfound magical talents. He steps outside and shouts the incantation, "Water, water, come forth," which instantly forms a sphere of water in his hand. Magic turns out to be much easier than he imagined. Even more astonishing, he can cast the same spell just by picturing the water ball, meaning saying the chant isn't actually required. Now that he's confirmed he can use magic, he heads straight to the bathhouse and begins filling the tub with water. However, he quickly notices a problem. He only knows how to create water, and there's no way he's going to enjoy a bath that isn't hot. So, he goes outside and tries to build a fire to heat the water manually. The only issue is he has no clue how to ignite a fire this way. After a while, he gives up and lies on his back in defeat. But as he gazes up at the sun, an idea strikes him. Rio grabs a basin, fills it with water, and begins focusing on it, trying to compress it while drawing out the heat. Slowly, ice starts to form. With a bit more effort and practice, he manages to shape the ice into a makeshift magnifying glass. Using it, he harnesses the sunlight to start a fire. With the fire finally going, he heats up his bath, which was filled with ice water. By the end of his first day, he's finally able to unwind and enjoy a proper soak. Now that he's mastered making ice, Rio realizes the opposite should also be possible. If he can remove heat to freeze water, he should be able to add heat to create warm water. This becomes his next goal, something he'll need to practice in the coming days. The following morning, as Rio eats breakfast, he starts to think. With only a 2-month supply of food from Michael, he knows he'll need to hunt soon to restock. But he doubts a mere knife will be enough to fend off the forest monsters. So, he resolves to begin practicing his attack magic. His first attempt is launching a water ball at a tree, and it works exactly as he imagined, but a small splash of water won't do much in a real fight. He remembers a way to increase the water's force, so he gathers another ball, this time compressing the water into a focused point for more pressure. The idea is sound, but his control isn't strong enough yet. His water jet barely has more power than a toy water gun. Rio recalls something Michael mentioned before his reincarnation. Magic relies heavily on imagination. The clearer the image in his mind, the better the result, and he just needs to keep refining it through practice. After several days of non-stop training, Rio's water jets are starting to take shape and look decent. However, they're still far from powerful enough to take down a monster. Rio has also figured out how to produce hot water, allowing him to enjoy warm baths whenever he likes. However, he's still working on fine-tuning the temperature, as his control isn't quite perfect yet. The next morning, he decides to practice his ice magic once more. This time, he attempts to conjure ice directly from the air, though it's difficult and takes nearly 3 minutes to form. He finally succeeds in creating ice out of nothing. However, unlike water, he struggles to launch it with the same ease. Combat training hasn't been going too well so far. None of the spells Rio has come up with have had much impact. Still, he spends the next few hours pushing himself, practicing non-stop until he finally collapses from mana depletion. Figuring he's reached his limit for the day, he calls it quits. But the very next morning, as soon as his mana is fully restored, he jumps right back into training. This routine becomes Rio's daily life over the next few weeks. Thanks to all his hard work, he can now create ice instantly, making it a reliable offensive spell. With his new set of attack magic finally ready and his food supply starting to run out, Rio ventures into the forest for the first time to begin hunting. He quickly notices a set of animal tracks and decides to follow them, which leads him to a nearby river. While exploring the area, he comes across some quartz by the riverside, something he can use to start fires by striking it against the edge of his sword. He also takes the opportunity to collect some detox herbs just in case he needs them later. But suddenly, a deep growl rumbles from behind him. When he turns around, he finds himself face to face with a lesser boar, and he freezes in place. The boar charges at Rio, but this is his first life or death battle, so he panics. At the last possible second, he snaps to his senses and leaps sideways, barely dodging the beast's rush. However, the boar isn't finished. It turns, ready to attack again. Luckily, Rio's mind clears just in time. As the boar charges toward him, he swiftly creates an icy path beneath its hooves, causing it to slip. Without wasting a moment, he summons several sharp ice spikes directly in the boar's path, stabbing it and killing it instantly. After butchering the boar, Rio pulls out the monster guidebook to learn more about it. According to the book, the lesser boar is actually the weakest monster found in that forest. The guide itself is clearly intended for beginners, so most of the listed creatures are fairly simple. However, toward the end of the book, Rio notices 2 additional pages that stand out. They look like they might contain something important. One of the pages describes dragons, immensely powerful creatures capable of wiping out entire cities by themselves. The guide strongly advises fleeing immediately if he ever comes across one, as fighting it would be hopeless. That said, outrunning a dragon isn't likely either, so running into one is game over. Another page mentions mysterious beings called Akuma, apparently a type of fallen angel. However, the book offers very little information about them. The book's only advice is simple: if you ever encounter one, you're as good as dead. The following day, Rio heads out to hunt again, but while his guard is down, a giant assassin hawk swoops down from above and launches a surprise attack. The creature uses wind magic to slice through its prey with razor-sharp slashes. Rio has no choice but to run, quickly summoning ice shields to block the incoming blades of wind. He knows hawks are extremely dangerous opponents and would rather avoid a fight, but escaping isn't an option. That means his only choice now is to stand his ground and fight back. He lifts his hand and launches a stream of water jets, but the hawk skillfully evades the attack and dives at him using wind magic to strike. Rio, however, reacts just in time, forming an ice shield that cuts the hawk across the eye and sends it crashing into the ground. Moments later, the hawk regains consciousness. Though it has permanently lost one eye, it takes to the skies to retreat. But before disappearing, it locks eyes with Rio one last time, etching his face into memory, because now it's personal. Rio lets out a sigh of relief, grateful to have made it out alive. Still, this is far from the peaceful life he had imagined for himself. During the chase with the hawk, he ran so deep into the forest that he ended up completely lost, wandering until well into the night. As he searches for a way back home, he unexpectedly stumbles upon a glowing lake. Right in the middle of it stands Abdullaha, and from the looks of it, the creature has already noticed him. Over time, Rio hones his skills through relentless training, mastering the art of hunting and preserving food with little difficulty. His water magic has grown significantly more powerful. He can now conjure razor-sharp ice sheets and slam them down in an instant. Even his water jets have reached new heights, slicing effortlessly through solid stone. At this point, his combat prowess has become formidable. However, ice magic isn't the only thing Rio has been practicing. Ever since his encounter with the Dullahan, he's ventured into the forest each night to battle it. Strangely, the monster guidebook never mentioned Dullahans. Either they aren't classified as monsters, or they're too advanced for a beginner's manual. Regardless, Rio remains determined to face it. He rushes in with his ice staff and starts swinging, treating the encounter more like a training session than a real battle. After all, the Dullahan completely outmatches him in both power and technique. Rio does his best to defend himself, summoning ice shields to block the incoming blows. But despite his efforts, he's quickly overwhelmed and brought down within seconds. Though the Dullahan has never spoken a single word to him, Rio can't shake the feeling that it's taken on the role of a mentor, trying to mold him into something stronger. Suddenly, the Dullahan lifts its sword and channels water magic to lengthen the blade. Rio is taken aback to discover that it can use water magic too. After showing him how the technique works, the Dullahan hands the sword over to Rio and calmly steps out onto the lake. One day, while Rio is out hunting, he is ambushed by the same assassin hawk from their previous encounter. He doesn't remember it being black before. It must have evolved, pushing itself to grow stronger just for this moment of vengeance. The hawk swoops down at Rio, unleashing a barrage of wind slashes. In response, Rio quickly conjures 5 layers of ice walls for protection. But now that the hawk has evolved, its wind attacks are far more powerful, strong enough to shatter all of Rio's defenses in an instant. and now a wave of anxiety begins to creep over him. Rio sprints across the field, throwing up ice walls to shield himself from incoming strikes. When he spots an opening, he fires back with a volley of ice spikes, but the hawk easily evades them, surging forward with a sudden burst of speed. And that's not the only surprise it has in store. The hawk lets out a piercing screech at a frequency that disrupts Rio's magic, causing his ice shields to vanish and leaving him nearly unprotected. But the hawk isn't finished yet. It hovers menacingly in front of him, and Rio senses that a major attack is coming, though he can't predict when. Moments later, Rio can feel electricity in the air as a bolt of lightning is shot straight at him. An attack like that would have been fatal, but luckily, he was able to use a stick as a lightning rod and jump away to save himself. As Rio struggles to shake off the lingering shock, the hawk swoops down, aiming to deliver a fatal strike with its sharp claws. At the last moment, Rio summons his ice blade and deflects the attack. They exchange several more blows, but Rio remembers his intense training with the Dullahan, so he spots an opening in the hawk's guard and drives his sword straight through its neck. As the hawk crashes to the ground, Rio slowly walks toward it, feeling a sense of understanding. He knows what it's like. The hawk lost an eye because of him, and ever since, it's been driven by the need to prove it was stronger, pushing itself to evolve. But Rio has also been working hard to grow stronger, and in the end, despite everything, the hawk was still defeated. Afterward, Rio starts making his way home, but to his complete surprise, a dragon suddenly appears before him. Remembering what the book said about dragons being unbeatable, he's convinced this is the end for him. But to his surprise, the dragon speaks to him through telepathy. It doesn't seem aggressive at all. In fact, it explains that it's just passing through, searching for a black hawk that passed through the area. The dragon simply wants to know if Rio has seen it nearby. Relieved that the dragon isn't hostile, Rio quickly realizes it must be referring to the hawk he just defeated. Nervously, he apologizes and explains that the hawk attacked him first, leaving him no choice but to fight back and end its life. The dragon is in shock that a human like Rio was able to defeat a hawk, though he doesn't appear particularly bothered by it. What really catches his attention is the sword Rio carries. He immediately recognizes it as the Fairy King's blade. For the Fairy King to entrust such a weapon to a mere boy, Rio must have done something to earn his favor. The dragon has grown fond of Rio, and Rio, still lacking much knowledge about this world, was hoping to ask him some questions. The two end up chatting for several hours well into the evening, but their conversation is eventually interrupted as the dragon says he must return home. Rio expresses his gratitude for the dragon's answers, and the dragon thanks him in return, saying it's been a long time since he's had such an engaging conversation. They part ways with a warm farewell. But meanwhile, up in heaven, Michael is going over the documents related to Rio's reincarnation when he suddenly spots something he had previously overlooked. It turns out Rio was granted a hidden trait, something Michael hasn't seen since he sent a girl to that world 10,000 years ago. In Rio's case, the trait is eternal youth, and Michael finds it rather unusual. Rio heads to the beach, craving salt-grilled seafood, but he's shocked to see a giant shipwreck. He notices a man's dead body, which makes him feel sad, but then he suddenly hears another man's grunt and feels relieved and happy to realize someone is still alive. Abel remembers how the ship was destroyed by a giant sea monster, and when he wakes up, he's surprised to find himself alive. He looks around and sees his belongings placed next to the bed, so he grabs his sword and walks out of the house. Rio arrives and greets him. Abel is surprised that he couldn't sense him at all. Judging by the way Rio is dressed, he assumes Rio has nothing else to wear, but quickly realizes he shouldn't think poorly of the man who saved him. He introduces himself and thanks Rio for saving him, but Rio mentions that all he did was bring him home, so there's no need to thank him. He shares the sad news that unfortunately, no one else survived. Abel realizes their bodies must have also washed ashore. He reveals that they were all smugglers, so Rio doesn't need to worry about them. But this shocks Rio. However, before Abel can say anything else, his stomach growls from hunger, so Rio invites him to lunch. While eating, Abel learns that Rio doesn't own any clothes, which surprises him. So he asks why he doesn't buy new clothes, but he soon realizes that since Rio has no money, he can't procure necessities. He thinks he might have offended Rio, but he mentions that there aren't any towns around here, so he can't just buy new clothes. Abel realizes he must have gotten the food by hunting, which impresses him. and he wonders if Rio used the knife to hunt. But Rio reveals that it's only for self-defense and cleaning whatever he catches, because he uses water magic for hunting. Abel is impressed because even in the central provinces, only about half of the population can use magic. And he is part of the ones who can't. Rio remembers Michael told him that the percentage of magic users is 20%. But Abel is unable to understand his mumbling, so Rio says it's nothing. Abel then asks Rio to take him to the coast since he wishes to confirm something. On the way, Abel asks Rio if he needs a staff since he is a magician, but Rio tells him that he doesn't have one, which shocks Abel, and he thinks Rio is too poor to afford it. He tells Rio that if they run into any trouble, he should let him take the front line, but Rio refuses. Abel insists that it's the least he can do, otherwise his reputation will get tarnished for always being the one getting saved. So, Rio reluctantly allows him. As they reach the shore, they are shocked to see that the bodies are gone. Rio thinks either the monsters ate them, or the water carried them back into the ocean. Abel reflects that if Rio hadn't saved him, he would have met the same fate. So, he's grateful to be alive. Rio remarks that he must be very lucky, and Abel agrees. Abel then mentions that it feels odd for the man who saved his life to be calling him Mr. Although Rio believes Abel is older than him, since he's requested it, he agrees to call him by his name. This makes Abel happy as that's how all his friends address him. Rio is surprised that Abel considers him a friend, but as he's thinking about it, Abel informs him that he couldn't find what he was looking for. Rio then asks what he plans to do next. Abel says he needs to find his friends somehow, and the first step is to reach the town of Lon. Although Rio hasn't been there himself, he believes it lies to the north, and that they'll need to trek across that side of the island. Abel then gets an idea and decides to recruit Rio as his guide. Rio agrees on the condition that he gets at least one day to make his preparations. Rio realizes he won't be able to continue his dream of living a slow life. At night, when he tells Abel that he needs to bid farewell to someone, he is surprised, since it's very late. But Rio mentions that the person is only available at this time. As he leaves, Abel remembers how he earlier said that no one else lived around there, but he thinks perhaps he wants to pay his respect to someone, and maybe he wasn't always alone on the island. But nonetheless, it's not his job to intervene in Rio's personal matters. Sometime later, we see that Rio has actually gone to bid farewell to the Dullahan, saying he will be leaving the forest of Rondo for a while, but he feels grateful for the training he has received that has enabled him to survive. He knows he will be away for a while, so he decides to use all his power in their last sparring session. Rio charges forward with full force, but the Dullahan easily deflects all his attacks, leaving him exhausted. Before leaving, the Dullahan gives him new clothes, which makes Rio very happy and promise to wear with pride. The next day, they finally begin their journey, and Rio wears his new outfit, which fits him perfectly. But on their way, they soon run into a lesser boar, so Abel tells him to stand behind him and observe. He charges at the boar and activates the combat skill called Total Impalement, which creates a hole in the boar's abdomen, and it dies on the spot, impressing Rio. He wonders what sort of skill it is, so Abel thinks a magician like him must have seen it for the first time. But it's very common for swordsmen and other people who use weapons to fight. The next morning, as they resume their journey, Abel hears a sound, and they notice two lizards in the marsh. Abel thinks they'll be difficult to deal with in the water, so they decide to take another route to avoid them. As they move along the alternate path, Rio senses that the lizard folk are following them. He informs Abel, who realizes they have no other choice but to fight. Rio tells him that there are a lot of them, so he'll use his magic to take them out. Abel reminds him that he doesn't have his staff, but Rio simply chants a spell and kills them all with icicles, shocking Abel. Together, they take out all the lizard folk. After the fight, Abel asks Rio about the spell, noting that the wind magicians he knows can only cast a single spell per invocation. Rio suggests that maybe it's different for water magic. Before they resume their journey, Rio uses magic to summon water so they can stay hydrated. However, Abel notices that Rio used a different incantation than before, which makes Rio nervous, and he quickly changes the topic, saying Abel must be imagining things. After walking for a bit, Abel gives Rio a coin, and he's surprised to see it, since it's his first time seeing this world's money. So Abel explains that it's a bronze florin used in the kingdom of Nightly, where Lon is located. He further explains that in the central provinces, each mints their own coins, but they all use the same denominations, and Nightly is one of the three major nations. with the other two being the Dohi Empire and the Hondalu Federation. Rio finds the name Dohi a bit strange, so Abel wonders if he has a problem with the nation. Rio clarifies that he just finds the name a little unusual. He explains that a nation's name is very important to its people since they have to introduce themselves everywhere as being from Dohi, which does sound odd. Rio admits he wouldn't like to introduce himself like that, and Abel thinks he's overthinking it a bit. After some time, they finally get out of the forest, but as they are walking, Abel notices a rock moving, so he gets ready to attack. But Rio creates an ice wall, which blocks the rock. Abel notes that they have been surrounded as they have stumbled into a rock golem's nest, but Rio is surprised to see the rock golems since he always thought they were humanoid with arms and legs. Abel tells Rio to stay there while he charges forward towards the golems, but his total impalement attack has no effect on it, as it quickly regenerates itself, which shocks him. Rio tells him that he has an attack he wants to try, so Abel tells him to go ahead. Rio creates 10 layers of ice walls joined together and drops them over the golem to immobilize it. Abel is shocked to see such powerful magic, but Rio casually mentions that he's only taken out 2 golems so far and plans to do the same with the rest. Soon, they take out most of the golems and only one remains. But surprisingly, it isn't moving, so Rio thinks perhaps they draw energy from the ground, and since it's flipped over, it can't draw energy from the earth. Just then, Abel notices a big magic stone attached to its bottom, which makes him happy, but he wishes he could collect it from the rest as well. But unfortunately, that won't be possible now. On their way, the duo notices a giant hippo sleeping, and Rio wonders if Abel wants to slay it, but Abel has no such ambitions. He reveals that he's never seen it in person, but it appears to be a behemoth. Suddenly, they notice several wyverns approaching, which excites Rio. They'll be able to witness a monster battle from the front row. Abel thinks the behemoth is at a disadvantage, but Rio believes it won't go down so easily. As the wyverns begin to attack, the behemoth gets up and lets out a loud screeching sound that knocks them out, making the wyverns fall to the ground. Rio explains that it used magic negation. At night, as they set up a fire to cook their meal, Rio jokes that he was hoping for a match between Abel and the behemoth, but Abel tells him that's not happening. He mentions that he's heard of traps in dungeons with similar effects, but he's never actually seen magic negation before. Hearing the word dungeon excites Rio, and Abel wonders if Rio wants to hear more about them. Rio says he would like to visit a dungeon himself, so Abel tells him that there's only one dungeon in the central provinces, and luckily, it happens to be in the town they're headed to. Rio jokingly asks why Abel has been hiding this information from him, prompting Abel to get defensive, saying he didn't know he was so interested in dungeons. Rio continues teasing him, asking if he's kept any more important information from him. So, Abel asks if he knows about elves and dwarves. Rio tells him that he doesn't. So, Abel informs him that dwarves are skilled smiths, and they are good at fighting. Also, Lon has a few of them. He further explains that Lon only has one elf, while the rest are settled in the woods, which they never leave, so Rio thinks it's just the way he is pictured. But Abel doesn't believe him, since he has never been outside that island. The next day, Rio continues to lead the way, and reveals that across the mountain, they'll find a human settlement. Abel wonders how he got this information, so Rio recalls how the dragon told him everything. He tells Abel that it's better if he doesn't know, and he calls his source of knowledge beyond humankind. As they walk, they suddenly sense something approaching from behind. In that moment, a giant griffin appears, leaving Abel in shock, who is frozen in fear. But Rio quickly takes some meat from his sack and throws it into the air, and the griffin grabs it and flies away. They're both relieved to have survived. Abel notes that he was completely stunned, while Rio admits they might not have made it if they had tried to fight it. Abel thinks they aren't built to fight such monsters, and he notes there aren't many reports of anyone running into behemoths or griffins for centuries, so he thinks something is wrong with this place. Rio finds it a bit rude, and he thinks maybe humans aren't looking hard enough, so Abel thinks perhaps these frozen mountains have been keeping them out of human territory. As they're walking, Rio suddenly remembers that the wyverns that attacked the behemoth came from the direction they're now traveling. Soon, they spot some wyverns feeding on their prey, and Abel notes that they can't fight them. It usually takes around 20 experienced adventurers to take down just one, and even then, there are often casualties. Rio thinks that even if they try to avoid them, they'll likely encounter more along the way, and they won't be able to avoid fighting forever. Rio wonders if it would be easier to fight the wyverns while they're on the ground, and Abel agrees, thinking he can use his sword more effectively that way. So, Rio steps forward to engage them. He summons several ice spikes to stab the wyverns, and Abel follows up with his total impalement technique. However, The wyvern's screams attract more of their kind. Rio uses an ice attack from above to bring them down, and Abel quickly finishes them off. After the battle, they collect the magic stones. Abel admits he can't believe how easy it was, while Rio wonders if Abel was hoping for a life and death battle just to get his heart racing. Just then, another flock of wyverns is on the way. They both prepare to fight, knowing they have no choice but to defeat them in order to keep moving. After successfully taking them all down, they reach the top of the mountain and are overjoyed to see a human settlement on the other side. That was the second episode. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on. The story begins in a magical world shared by 9 races. Dragonutes, elves, onests, dwarves, demons, dark elves, centaurs, beastfolk, and humans, from whom a young adventurer called Light was born. Wanting to give his family a better life, Light says goodbye to his hometown and sets out to explore for money and power. After reaching a big city, Light gets shoved around by the crowd, but he continues searching for the Adventurers Guild. When he finally enters the guild, he introduces himself to the receptionist, who asks if he wants to register as a fresh adventurer. As he nods, she explains that he'll start from the lowest F rank and then asks if he has a special ability. Light responds that he has an unlimited Gacha ability, which allows him to roll for random cards and summon them. To demonstrate, he summons a broken fork in front of her, leaving the receptionist completely speechless. Embarrassed, Light tries to act like silverware isn't the only thing he can summon, but his next rolls just give him a bunch of rotten snacks. Light feels disappointed that his luck has decided to betray him at the worst possible moment, and the receptionist confirms that he deserves the pathetic F rank. After receiving his adventurer's card, he asks her for some quests, and she tells him to check the guild's job board. At the mention of job posts, Light looks awkward, and the receptionist quickly realizes that he can't even read the board. Feeling pity for her uneducated fellow human, she kindly reads out the job posts for him. Feeling excited to finally earn some real money, Light happily accepts the boring tasks. After a full day of hard work, he finally earns enough money to rent a room. However, a gang of beastfolk knocks him down and starts bullying him as their leader picks up his hard-earned money. Light begs him to have mercy, but the cruel wolfman only laughs before knocking him back with a hard uppercut. The wolfman taunts Light for begging for spare change and coldly leaves with his laughing gang. Even the surrounding crowd ignores Light while he lies on the ground, until a kind elf helps him up. Light gets surprised by the many adventurers surrounding him and backs down in shock. Seeing how frightened he is, the elf hugs him to comfort him, even as the passers-by mock her. Shocked that a pretty elf would get dirty for his sake, Light allows her to help him stand. The adventurers then introduce themselves as members of the Concord of Tribes. A beast man named Geru explains that each member represents one of the 9 races, and the elf introduces herself as Sasha. She introduces the rest of her companions: Drago, Diablo, Obero, Nano, Sion, and Santor. With 8 of the 9 races already represented, Light learns that the Concord is searching for a human member to complete their unity of all races in the world. As Geru reaches out his hand to invite him, Light feels stunned that someone actually needs his help, then happily accepts the invitation. Soon, Light begins exploring a cave dungeon called the Abyss with his new group. When a huge worm beast tries to attack him, Geru chops it apart before it can hurt him. But another worm sneaks up behind Light, so Sasha quickly takes it down with her bow. She scolds Light for being careless and reminds him that they are exploring the world's most dangerous dungeon, where he could easily die. She sits down and takes care of his wounds. Noticing how she's acting like his mother, the other party members begin teasing Sasha for spoiling Light so much. Blushing furiously, Sasha tries to act like she doesn't care about Light at all, claiming she's just protecting a fellow member. But as the party ignores her weak excuse, Sasha only gets more defensive. Drago steps in and cheers up Light, praising him for making excellent tea for their team. With his spirits lifted, Light follows the group deeper into the dungeon. When the group suddenly stops at a dead end, Light thinks they are about to take a break, so he begins preparing tea. But to his shock, Drago coldly tells him that they don't need the tea, because they're kicking him out of the party. At first, Light thinks it's just a prank, but Drago harshly repeats his words, leaving him stunned. Geru also tells him that he's out, so Light asks why they're dumping him. Geru replies that their group doesn't need him, and Sasha even expresses disgust at his foolishness. Xion and Nano also mock Light for being pathetic, while the demons in the group feel relieved that they can finally get rid of him. Hurt, Light asks why they would be so cruel after all their kindness earlier. That's when Garu reveals that they were just faking their kindness to lure him into their party. Light wonders why such powerful masters would even need him, and Drago explains that it was only because of his special ability. They thought he might be an overpowered maestro, but it turned out his ability was trash. Light protests that his unlimited gacha ability never seemed useful, and Garu mocks him further, saying that as a talentless human, he is just dead weight. Shocked and devastated, Light realizes they were only using him and that it took them this long to finally dump him. Meanwhile, Sasha feels relieved, saying she can now marry her master instead of ending up with the pathetic human boy. Overwhelmed by this shocking betrayal, Light barely has time to react before Drago tells Garu to finish him off. Light suddenly realizes the danger he's in, but as he sees their hostile stares, he understands they plan to kill him to prevent him from ever getting stronger and seeking revenge later. Garu slashes his cheek with his claws, and as Light looks at the blood flowing, the rest of the party watches coldly. Light tries to run, but Sasha shoots an arrow at his leg to prevent him from escaping. Struggling in pain, Light collapses, and Garu takes pleasure in his suffering by kicking him hard in the stomach before brutally beating him. Sasha finally stops him, reminding him that Light's death needs to look like an accident. But Garu only raises his claw for a final strike. As Light desperately crawls, wanting to live, Garu finds joy in watching him struggle. Suddenly, Light's hand presses against a teleportation trap. Drago yells for Garu to kill him before it activates, but it's too late. The trap safely teleports Light away before the Beastman can reach him. When Light wakes up elsewhere in the dungeon, he is still badly injured and thinks that any monster could eat him at this point. As the cold chill of the cave reminds him of his loving family, Light begins to cry. He recalls how kind the Concord had seemed at first, and wonders why they became so cruel, their cold expressions haunting him. He feels anger building up from their betrayal and confusion at how he got caught up with such dangerous people, but his confusion quickly turns into fury as he vows revenge. Light forces himself to his feet, determined to cut down all of them, but suddenly feels a cold gaze behind him. Turning around, he sees a level 1 Orthus beast stalking him. Shocked, Light wonders why such a broken monster would be here, and realizes that the teleportation trap sent him to the deepest level of the abyss. As the Orthus approaches, Light desperately spams his unlimited gacha ability, praying for a miracle. At the last moment, his frantic roll summons a huge magic circle that releases a powerful aura. In disbelief, Light watches as the gacha summons an ancient fairy. Recognizing Light as her master, the mysterious fairy easily chops the monster apart before gracefully landing in front of him. With a flick of her hands, she clears the mess and then humbly kneels before Light, healing all his wounds with her magic. She even apologizes for healing him without permission, saying she couldn't bear to see him injured. Light introduces himself, still in disbelief that he managed to summon the most overpowered fairy in the world. The fairy, captivated by his name, repeats it lovingly before swearing complete loyalty to him. Not knowing who she really is, Light asks for her name. She reveals that she is May, the level 99,999 ever-seeking maid, a super ultra-rare card from his gacha. Light can hardly believe it, saying that his gacha only ever produced junk, and there's no way he pulled such a powerful being. But May insists that he completely deserves her, and begs him to accept her. Seeing her pitiful face, Light finally agrees, and May thanks him tearfully. She then asks to examine his gacha ability, revealing that she has the appraisal skill. With his permission, her glowing eyes examine him, and she discovers layers of hidden protections. May explains that the gacha only seemed useless before because Light was in areas with little mana. But here in the abyss, where mana is supercharged, the gacha absorbed it and boosted his chances of pulling rare cards. She explains the full ranking system of the cards, from extra rank and super ultra rare down to normal and error. Light still doesn't fully understand, so May clarifies that on the surface, he could never summon anything good because there wasn't enough mana. She praises him for figuring out the gacha's true potential by entering the abyss, even though it was extremely dangerous. However, when Light admits he only entered because of his party, May listens as he tells her about their betrayal. Crying as he recalls their cruel taunts and abuse, Light vents his pain and says he only wanted to earn an honest living for his family. May is devastated by his story, and when he falls to his knees saying he'll never forgive them, she silently hugs him. In her warm embrace, Light finally calms down. May tells him that she may never fully understand his suffering, but she will use all her power to give the Concord their deserved retribution. Shocked, Light tries to stop her, but she vows to line all of them up in front of him in an instant. Light insists that he doesn't want to abuse her power for revenge. Instead, he vows to grow stronger himself and punish the Concord with his own 2 hands. Mei thinks he is too kind for his own good, but promises her unwavering support. Encouraged, Light smiles as she returns his smile. With Mei by his side, Light begins using his gacha again, summoning more powerful tools in the abyss. Fueled by the infinite mana, giant magic circles surround him, summoning ultimate weapons and items. With Mei watching faithfully at his side, Light begins the first step of his journey, building his empire in the darkness of the abyss, ready to rise stronger than ever before.